Well, we're going to try and see if is it on now? I don't mind, but should I keep talking, Brian? It's not working? Okay. Oh, hello? I have to talk really, really like. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, so, oh, that's very loud. Okay. Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Um, I just returned from my hometown of the Big Easy, so I'm not quite back here in the Little Easy. Um, kind of glad I missed all that snow, but we had record-setting temperatures in New Orleans, and the houses are built where, just the air comes right through it, cockroaches, everything comes right through it. We're all off the ground by, about a foot or two, and that first night that I was there, it was so cold. I've never been colder than I am in New Orleans, just because we don't have good heat, and we have this one little gas heater that I hadn't turned on. And I was sleeping on the couch. I was pulling couch cushions on top of me in the middle of the night to sleep. And when I woke up, I thought, oh, I've never seen ice on the windows in New Orleans, ever. I mean, my whole childhood, I never saw snow. And then I went and touched it, and it was on the inside. Yeah. So anyway, we turned the gas heater on that night, the next night. So, but then I looked at pictures of Raleigh, and I thought, oh, yes, y'all have heat. Well, I mean, so we have, they're not built like when I grew up. We had one little heater in the bathroom. If it was cold in the morning, you just turned on the oven and got dressed in the kitchen. That was plenty. You're not going to need it by noon. All right, but I'm back, and thanks everyone. And I heard that Robbie did an amazing job with the interactive wheel, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's start by just getting into a comfortable position and doing a little checking our motivation kind of stuff. So before we do that, is anybody here for the very first time? Okay, thanks for coming. Is this your first time to the center too? Okay. So, each of these, Discovering Buddhism is this long, like year and a half course that you can come in at any point. So if there's things this is the third class in this particular module where we're talking about Samsara and Nirvana. And I'll review some stuff, but if some of it doesn't make any sense, just feel free to talk to me or to Mick later today or tonight or anybody. Brian sitting over there knows a lot more than he's going to let on, but he's been through all these DB classes. So just come and talk to anybody, any of us. Yeah, so get into a comfortable position. And the first thing that we do is we check our motivation. We try to expand our motivation. So think about why you're here. If you came, like even the most simplest, you came here to get information so that you could become happier, calmer, more charitable, some reason that this piqued your interest. And for those of you who've been working on motivation for a while, and particularly on this subject of samsara, you can apply the teachings that we've been talking about to this. Your motivation to get out of samsaric existence. And so by setting our intention clearly, it will direct our mind and our energies more completely throughout the class, allowing us to receive more information and also to gain more merit from it. In order to expand your motivation, maybe if you came here for more information, to learn to be calmer, what would it be like if you achieved that goal? If tomorrow you were a little bit calmer than you were today, a little bit happier, a little bit more centered, a little wiser. On a very practical level, think about how your day would be different and how the people around you would also benefit from that change. That ripple effect that we can hardly really understand, but we know, somewhere inside us, we know that ripple effect. So try to see how that ripple effect would carry on if you accomplished your goals on any level. And then if you have the prayer book in front of you, just turn to page 34. We're just going to do these two prayers as a way to open the class. So on page 34, it's the taking refuge prayer. And if this is new to you, you can just listen. That's totally fine. Even if you're not new, you can just you only say this if you want to. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. So we're going to say this 3 times. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be separable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Okay, now we're going to do about a 5-minute meditation just to kind of let go of Monday, let Monday slide off of our back, and kind of center our thoughts. So get into a comfortable position. If you're seated, make sure that your feet are flat on the floor, facing ahead. The most important point is that your back is straight. You can put your hands, if you want to, in the position where the left one is below, just below your navel. The right one is laying on top of it. Your thumbs are just gently touching, arms out away from your body, so that you can take deep breaths. Your chin is lightly tucked so that your spine is like coins stacked on top of each other. Tongue at the back of your teeth. Your jaw relaxed, your eyes either closed or just a little bit open. And then in order to tie the mind to something so that it doesn't run all over the place, you can count your breaths, either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, with 1 inhale, 1 exhale being 1, and the next one, full inhale, exhale being 2. And every time your mind wanders, it's an opportunity to kind of strengthen that muscle of concentration. Don't be hard on yourself. Just go, oh yeah, right, this is the time now I can bring it back to the count. So gently bring your mind as though it was a precious child wandering off back to the count over and over again. And I'll let you know when 5 minutes is up. Pretty good for Monday. So, we were talking about Samsara and Nirvana, and the more I thought about it, the more I really liked that analogy I came up with about the North Korean prison camp. Because, just to review, one of the reasons it's really hard for us to get a handle on things is because it's hard for us to remember some of the times that we are that what we are chasing is not the way out. So the whole point of studying samsara is to see that this cycle of existence that we're in is endless until we can find that exit ramp, right? And that a lot of the things that we're doing are just simply perpetuating us staying on that. And that's what that whole lesson last week was about. That whole wheel just keeps on spinning until we can find the right ways out. And so what I'd said the other day, and some of you were here for it and some of you weren't, but I got to thinking some more about it. So I had read this story about this man who was born in a North Korean prison camp, and for his life, he didn't really, until he was a little older, he didn't realize that there was anything other than that. He just thought there are prison guards and prisoners. The best you could hope for was to be a prison guard. And that was it. And until he later on met somebody and had heard some more stories about there's life that's different than this and so on and so forth. But he had no experience with that. He was just listening to people talk about there's something besides prison camp. So if that was us, if we were in that situation, then we would also be, and I'm making the analogy that we are, so we are looking at our lives and trying to rearrange things so that we have a better prison cell, or that maybe one day we can be an officer and have better food and more freedom, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just going to continue to keep you in prison until you see the bigger picture. And one of the things I wanted to stress was that once you see that bigger picture, if you were that man and once you realize, oh, there's something besides this and it's better and I can do these and these and these things, then instantly you want that and you want to get out. There would be no doubt. That was with him day and night. So when we talk about renunciation and developing renunciation, that's really it, to realize I want to get out. We think of renunciation with such heaviness. We talked before about how kind of the stereotypical definition of renunciation, we think of a renunciant as somebody who's like just barely wearing clothes and sitting off to the side in a cave and, way away from everything. And I gave you that definition that renunciation doesn't mean going away from the world. It means knowing that the world goes away. And when you know the world goes away, then you relate to the world differently. Doesn't mean you don't still enjoy this nice drink and in using that analogy of the prison camp, knowing that you could maybe get out of this prison, then you might start doing things a little bit differently inside that prison camp. Maybe it would be better if you were a prison guard, because then you might be able to get out. Maybe, you would still want to get better food and better conditions, but your mind would still be on how to use those things in order to get out. Okay, I need to keep healthy so that I can escape. I need to learn a few more things over here so that I can get out. It doesn't mean that you stop trying to be happy. In fact, what if it was that actually expanding your happiness was going to help you get out, right? That's what I think about more for our prison camp, is that it's not about being gloomy and not enjoying things. It's about, in fact, expanding your capacity for patience and happiness and joy and compassion to an incredible degree. That's what we're all trying to do. But it's just that we also need to reduce our clinging and our craving and our grasping and our attachment at the same time. And that's where I think that definition of if knowing that the world goes away doesn't mean that you stop doing things, doesn't mean that you stop going to the movies or stop enjoying whatever you're enjoying, but you just relate to all of that enjoyment in a different way. Just like the analogy I gave before about going to a hotel, you know that you're leaving the next day, you enjoy it, then you leave. You don't, oh my God, I'm leaving the hotel room today. It's just not like that. You know what's coming. So the minute that you realize this is a prison camp and I want to get out, that's renunciation. But we here it's so tricky. It's so tricky. And so the whole reason that we study the Four Noble Truths, the whole reason we spend so much time on the first two of them, is because we need reminders that there's more than just this. That this actually, the thing that I'm so working so hard to get is actually not really going to help me that much. Or I need to use this thing that I want to help me move towards that escape route. That so much of our work needs to remind us that, oh, right, this is a prison camp, and all I'm doing right now is really rearranging my cell. Okay? That's the whole point of all these meditations. And the other, I wanted to tell you this. Oh, no, I have to go. I'm trying to stick to my plan here. So like we did this prayer 3 times, and you might see people stand up and do prostrations 3 times. And I heard the Dalai Lama talk about why it's 3 times. The first time you keep in mind, I'm doing this prostration or saying this prayer. You could, and I'm trying to use it with that analogy, so that I can have better conditions in this prison camp. Okay? So that, and if you were doing it traditionally, so that I could have better rebirths. Okay? The second time you do it, it's so that I can escape this prison. So that I can escape samsara. I'm going to take refuge so that I can escape samsara. I'm doing this prostration so I can escape samsara. The third time is so that I can turn around and free everyone else. And that's complete enlightenment. You'll hear people talk about nirvana being different than complete enlightenment, because in complete enlightenment, there's no tendencies at all anymore in your mind stream, and you are able then to, you've developed this huge capacity to want to free others. So the first one is recognizing, oh my God, this is a prison camp. And I want to have the best conditions here possible. Okay, I'm going to work hard to have better conditions here. The second one is, oh my God, I got to get out of here. And the third one is, and I want to get everybody else out. I don't want to leave my friends there. I'm going to find a way out so that I can turn around and open that door for everybody else. Okay, think of like Harriet Tubman, perfect example, right? She couldn't have freed everybody else if she hadn't gotten her own way out and then developed the whole Underground Railroad. Okay, so like that, yeah.
You mentioned her name last week, and I looked some stuff up, and one of her quotes were, "I freed hundreds of slaves, but I could have freed thousands if they knew they were slaves."
Oh, wow.
That's a Harriet Tubman
Wow.
quote.
Wow. Interesting.
I mean, it really lined right up with what you were saying last week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's and sometimes people think, oh, Buddhism is so depressing because we're going to meditate on suffering, but it's really just this reminder of don't get fooled, because everything, things are so beautiful at times. Another thing, that the word suffering can seem so intense because we have in the Western view, we have a different kind of thought usually about suffering. So we're going to get back to the meditations on that in a minute. But another word that you might want to use when you're hearing it is unease. It doesn't always have to be, suffering we think of just really heavy duty. It is, but also all in that spectrum, we also have unease, the uneasiness of something. That's all part of it, the Four Noble Truths. That's all part of the whole package that we're talking about. And what I really encourage you all to do is to kind of look at everything around you for clues and lessons. So I have this example. I don't think I told this to you all. Stop me if I did. Somebody please stop me if I did. But I had placed my mother in assisted living. This is years ago. And it was really difficult, and she had a lot of trouble, using the fork and the spoon. And so this group of women were so sweet to her, and every meal they would help her, and they would get her tea and all this stuff. I saw them taking really good care of her, and I said to the head nurse there, I said, "That's just so amazing to me that these women are, helping my mother with such tenderness." And she said, "You know what? We're all here for a reason. Everybody here is here for a reason. And those who recognize it, turn around and help somebody else." And I kind of was like, am I awake? Is she saying this to me? It sounds like a perfect little Dharma lesson, We're all here for a reason. We're all unenlightened for a reason. And those of us who realize that turn around and help other people. It's just as simple as that. And I was just blown away. So there's these little lessons all over the place. And it's just a matter of kind of collecting them and using them to remind ourselves. So I want you to think of I want you to come up with 2 lists. And we're going to get into small groups to do this. But I want you to think of what during the day can remind you that this is indeed a prison camp. Okay, because there's very traditional ones that we're going to get to those in a minute. But I also want them to fit your life. So make a list of, first make a list of why it's hard to see this as a prison camp. What makes that challenging? What in particular makes this challenging to see this as the equivalent of a prison camp? And then what are the reminders, personally for you or, for us in this time on earth, the reminders that are helpful, okay? And then we'll come back and talk about them, and then we'll do we'll look at the traditional list. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so get into groups of like no more than 5, and if and introduce yourselves. And people who've done this before, make sure some of the new people are in that group, and then just go off in different corners. And we have about 15 minutes. I'll ring the bell when we're getting close to ending, and then we'll come back and share. Okay, thanks. Okay, take a few more minutes to finish your lists. Okay, and take a minute to finish up, then come back to the group. We're probably going to need those mics. Yeah. What's up?
Do you want to keep a list as people do them?
No, that's okay. I'm gonna use this other list, but I want to hear people's lists. So we might need those mics. Okay, how did y'all do with your lists? We have some mics we're going to pass around because the reason we use these is because people are watching me. You're not on camera, but from home. So that way people who are ill or who live far away or have got sick kids can still listen in or listen later. So anybody want to share parts of the list? And if you don't feel comfortable with the mic, I can just repeat what you've said.
You do it. You got it.
People are going to hear you anyway. Yes. If I can speak into this mic, you can do it. You can do it.
So we had a hard time because we felt like things, I'm over here,
Okay.
that they were kind of in both lists, but for
Uh-huh.
why is it difficult to see life as samsara? We see things as making us happy.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things to distract us. So we go from one thing that makes us happy and then we're not happy to another thing
Mm-hmm.
that makes us happy. And then we felt like the way we were raised in our society also contributes to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then things that may remind us we're in samsara and want to escape are work, insurance, and because we were laughing about the story of the car insurance being the suffering of insurance, because we're paying for something that doesn't exist. It's a potential problem, but there's not actually anything there.
Yeah.
And then constant craving and attachment
Okay.
were our things.
Great.
Want to add to that?
Thank you.
Work out of you.
So I'll just do one from each side. One of the ones is seeing people who seem to have it all, especially like in the States, we have a big celebrity culture. And we almost treat it as if these people are experts in giving life advice because they seem to have it all. And so we make their goals and aspirations ours instead of figuring out what we want. And then one other, actually this happened on both, we talked about a little bit, was nature. Not only can it be beautiful, but I was saying, like, when I watch National Geographic and like the hyenas picking out, the weak one of the flock, like that's just existence for way more life forms than humans.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's kind of all part of the existence that we're in. And their very survival depends on like avoiding that suffering, but also causing it for others.
Right. Right. Yeah, and how thin that is for us too. We've just gotten kind of spoiled, but in a heartbeat, that would be our existence. And I remember when I was a kid, I guess we got our first television set when I was like 5 or 6, and so up till then, all my experience of animals were just the rabbits in the backyard and the birds and my picture books, which were all these wonderful animals who could talk and loved me, And then all of a sudden, I remember somebody watching Wild Kingdom, and I was horrified, like, what is this lion doing to this gazelle, and like ripped its head off and blood everywhere. I was just blown away, like, this is the world I live in? It had gone from like Babar, to like, but and I just never, that just shook me, and I still kind of meditate on that to like shake me up again, like, no, that's what it's like. Or these people who went on this whale watch, and instead of watching these whales just kind of come up and breathe, they watched some whales like killing another whale or something, and they were horrified. And now they warn people before the whale watch, like, you're going to be seeing nature, anything could happen, Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
So we discussed, I don't know if we were as detailed, we just began to speak to each other, but we went from opening the blinds this morning and noticing that all the the snow was gone and the leaves are brown, the grass was brown, and in my neighborhood where they plowed, people's yards are torn up, and I feel for them.
Yeah.
We went from that to discussing home renovations and how it is that we yearn to have something we call our own and our own place and a place to be, but then we go through the rigmaroles of making it look like so, and I think he said he wanted to burn it down and put the dogs in the car and take off. And we talked about, for me this morning, I thought it was ironic that you brought this up. In an intuitive class this morning, I was taking somehow child abduction came up and child trafficking, which is a huge issue in this country. But I have 2 little girls, and it resonated with me beyond belief. And I think of the suffering of families that have undergone that.
Yeah.
Anything you would add to that? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Under why is it hard to think we exist in a prison camp? I think the major thing we talked about was that many people might be in denial of it because it's just too hard to live your life in constant awareness that you're suffering. And that can be pretty depressing, like we talked about, and might make you even feel like, why am I alive in the first place, when it would be more peaceful to just not exist. And then under what reminds you, we said other people's suffering reminds us that we are in suffering. Because even when you're having a great day, you know, one of your friends may be in a lot of, having a lot of like problems in their life. So, and then just the fact that nothing good lasts forever.
Yeah.
And that if you are aware that you're in a prison camp, it's like, how can I even appreciate this? It's just going to be taken away from me.
Yeah.
But I think that changing your perspective on that and thinking about it in a positive way, that I have this now, that's great. And new things will come and other things will go, and then you'll be fine. Yeah.
And what you said something about that sometimes it feels like it'd be easier just to not exist, right? And, you know, what would that be like?
I think about that a lot, yeah.
What would it be like if I didn't exist? Well, yeah, there's nothing that can feel that.
We talked about the duality of the mind-body union and how it's like, why would I want to even try to be happy on this earth? And I think we came to the conclusion that, like, you can't have your existence without your mind and your body. So in order to master your mind, you have to be completely present and happy in the reality that you're in.
Right. Right, and I also think it was Thich Nhat Hanh who said, you know, if you don't expand your happiness, and this is what all of this is helping us look at, well, what is happiness? Because we're thinking happiness is that or that or that, and then we're finding, oh, it's not, and I'm disappointed. So it's helping us stretch what our definition of happiness is. And so if you find a definition of happiness and you expand that happiness, that's what people take refuge in. So I remember when I first showed Geshe this documentary on Mother Teresa, he said to me, his English was, he was pretty new to this country, and he said, you know, people love her and she's ugly. And I said, okay, ugly is like, not the right word here, because I was teaching him English every day. He goes, what's the right word? And I said, well, she's not beautiful on the outside. And he goes, yeah, that's it. But look how people love her because of her mind, because of her joy, and because of, you know, her big open heart. People would just flock to her, right? So it's expanding that, and if he's always, if it's possible to be happy for 1 minute, it's possible to be happy for 2 minutes, and like that's how we expand things. That's why the Lam Rim, or the path to enlightenment, is called the graduated path to enlightenment. And that's why we start with recognizing we're in this camp, and then wanting to get out, and then wanting, you know, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of, we were talking about what reminds us that you're in suffering is that you always have like a void that you need to fill constantly. There's something that you keep needing. But if you can fill it with, you know, knowing that you're in suffering, and then that you can have better, that like fills the void, and then the void's full, so then you can expand your energy outward.
I think this is the hard thing, is knowing there's something better, because we don't, like I said last time, we don't have these coming attractions. We don't have, like, I just would love Hollywood to make some movies about, like, anything that I would help me see, like, oh, that's what's possible. Like, once in a while, you see a movie like that. But just take somebody's life who's really an amazing person, and let's look how they got there. I'm fascinated with that, the challenges and how they worked with that and how they stretched their mind, you know, anything. But we just don't have very much of that. And so we will talk more and more about how logically to what we can work with logically to see that there's something else. Because Geshe did talk at one point about, do you ever doubt that there's enlightenment? You know, what can you do when you doubt that there's even enlightenment? Then and how you can get there? Oh, that you can get there. Yeah, I think, you know, if you know, for what am I trying to say? If we can know that there's mind states higher than ours, then to me that's hopeful. Like, okay, maybe not in this life, but I can do everything possible in this life to get me closer. And I know it sometimes seems like we're juggling a lot of different things, like, okay, I need to remember that there's suffering, but, but I'm also, yes, life is good. Life is good because it's this precious chance. It's not life is good because I can go in a canoe tomorrow. Life is good because it's this precious chance to get out. And I can still enjoy the canoe. Doesn't mean I have to stop canoeing. All right, so I want to write down a couple of things. Did anybody else have a list that they want? Oh, I'm sorry.
We were saying that why is it hard to see that we're in a prison camp is because we're limited to what we experience or exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know you're in it. You're just going through life and you have no idea. And then what reminds you of that you're in a prison camp is one of the people in the group said it's like you're going on errands every day. You're doing, you're doing things. You're going through this job, and you're thinking, well, if I had this job, I'd be this, or if I was in this relationship, I would be this.
Right, right. And so the good news, bad news about that is the bad news is it doesn't turn out that way. The good news, the good news is we want to be happy. That's the good news, is that we have that wish to increase our happiness. And just like that man in that prison, it took him until he was like 20 or something to really meet somebody who had lived their life outside of the camp, and to him to understand that there existed another world. So it was through hearing. He hadn't experienced it yet. All he had experienced was that prison camp. And so it was just through hearing, which is why hearing is such an important thing in the teachings, so hearing that there's something else, and then, analyzing that, and then checking things out for himself. And then he made, so I'll tell you the rest of his story, because then this guy, he had decided to escape with this guy. And I can't remember all the details, but this guy, like when they were trying to get out of this one fence, I think the guy was shot. He fell on the wire, and then this guy could climb over his dead body to get out. So the man who grew up in the prison camp climbed over this man's dead body, got out, and then he had to go all the way, hiding, because he didn't know the language. In North Korea he was fine, but he still didn't know how to do anything. He'd spent his whole life there. So he just had to kind of piece things together. Eventually, after a long journey, he gets down to South Korea. People take him in and try to help him, and he's pretty miserable. Can you imagine? You grew up, this is your experience of kindness. His kindness experience was one time when he was being punished, and somebody was kind of helping him with all the wounds on his back or something like that. So now he's in South Korea. He's experiencing this whole new world, and when he thinks of what he wants to do, is he wants to go back to the prison camp, but it not be a prison camp anymore. And he wants to grow vegetables and just live there with his friends. So, in some ways, he wants to go back and get everybody out. So, I kind of see, and he's improving every single day the more he gets exposed to things. But, it's an incredible story. So back to our story. It's not quite as dramatic yet, The suffering there's three kinds of suffering. They all fall into, your list is perfect because those are the ones you're going to be using every day, and then you can apply these other lists we're talking about. One is, I wrote here unease, just so we can remember that it's also not always so dramatic as suffering. Three types of unease are the suffering of suffering. And this is the kind of suffering even an animal understands. If an animal is kicked, it's going to hurt. If it goes into that electric fence, it's going to get hurt. If I've got a headache, I'm suffering. It's the obvious sufferings of the day. The second type is the suffering of change. And I want you to think about time you're really hungry, and you finally, like I in New Orleans, I walked like 4 or 5 miles. I was really hungry. I was getting a headache, and I get to this restaurant. I had the best grilled cheese sandwich of my life, mostly because I was just so hungry, right? So I sat down and I ate it, and it felt fantastic. Now, so think about your favorite food. You finally get to eat some of your favorite food, and now you're being told you have to eat more and more and more and more of it. That joy, that pleasantness, that the relief of the suffering of not eating, then will turn into the suffering of overeating. So that's the suffering of change. It's just that it never stays constant. So you say you were standing up for an hour, and finally we let you in here and you get to sit down. Whew. So then you feel good. And then it's kind of neutral. You're fine sitting in the chair. Not great, not bad, just neutral. And then you're not allowed to get up. Now you start, when you're sitting on a long plane ride. So it just constantly shifts. Then finally you get to stand up. Oh, that feels good. And now you have to stand up for 6 hours. Then it just is always shifting. And Geshe-la thinks, we comment on it all the time, right? So we were out somewhere, it was really cold, we get into the car, they had these hot seats, you turn the seat on, and then I was all of a sudden it was too hot in the car. So it's just like, it's got to be just right. And just right doesn't last that long. And then this way, that way, the other way. So this is our life. And then the last one is a little trickier to explain. It's just the pervasiveness. Let me see if I spelled it right. The pervasiveness of suffering. And you can read about it in the articles, but basically it's the fact that we have these aggregates that have come together that form us, our minds, our thoughts, our bodies, our likes, our dislikes. This thing that is you is the reason that we have suffering. So we don't want to just eliminate this, because then we won't have, we'll just get, depending on what you believe, that's not going to be the answer, right? In His Holiness's article, he talks about, if you get to that point where you realize, the pervasiveness of suffering is this self that I'm carrying around. This is the self that's in this prison camp. This is connected to all of the suffering. There's the suffering, the suffering of change, and then there's the fact that I am in this form that's imprisoned. That's the final one. That's the big picture one. And when you get there, then you think, okay, maybe I'll do away with myself. That'll be the answer. But that won't be the answer, because according to Buddhism, your mind stream just continues on, and it may not be like, okay, got rid of that problem. Now I'm doing good here and wherever I am. No, it's going to continue. So then we look at what are the causes of suffering, which gets to the second noble truth. The first noble truth being the truth of suffering, the truth of unease, the truth of these things. And the second noble truth is the truth of the causes of suffering, which we'll continue to look at. But what Robbie was talking to you last week about is what helps keep us on that cycle, what keeps us in prison. And it has to do with our minds. Our minds being at the level where we are running after certain things and grabbing onto certain things that just keep perpetuating the cycle of existence. And so what we have now, though, the good news is, because all of this, remember, everything in Buddhism is meant to empower you. It's not meant to depress you. It's not meant to freak you out. It's not meant to do anything other than empower you. And if it's scaring you at some point, then okay, I'm just thinking about this wrong. What's the empowerment part here? The empowerment part is, I won the lottery, because I have this incredible chance to weaken that mind stream that's continuing this circle. I'm not just blindly walking around, making things worse. I'm sitting here trying to figure it out. How many people on a Monday night are sitting here trying to figure it out? Geshe-la says that to me all the time. That's huge. So yes, we need to be like, oh wow, this is pretty overwhelming. Look where I've landed. This is not nirvana. This is not nirvana. But those of us who realize it's not nirvana, turn around and help somebody else, and that's huge. And we're trying to help ourselves loosen that grip to not just chase after our 3-year-old mind. Our 3-year-old mind is, oh, that looks good. I want to eat that. This is fantastic. Let me try this. And we're trying to lower the exaggerations that our mind creates and see through it, so we see the bigger picture, that I have this incredible opportunity to create more merit and to become wiser, to clean up my mind so that I can become wiser. So this used to really puzzle me for a while, and then I remembered I wasn't really raised in any religion, but I like the stories of all religions, and this one helped me understand the difference between minds, what our minds do, and how it's all up to us. So that story in the Bible where Jesus is walking somewhere and somebody touches his robe and they're healed, and then Jesus says, oh, no, it was your faith that healed you. I didn't heal you. Your faith healed you. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So it's the two coming together. It's like that person who touched his robe had faith and the power of the object itself coming together. But it's not coming just from that side. Otherwise, everybody walking by would be like, bingo. But there's some people who wanted to kill him. There's some people who it just didn't matter at all and didn't even recognize anything. There's other people who touched that robe and were healed. So it comes from, we are working on our side. And our side is about cleaning up our view so that we can see more. We can see where we need to go, what we need to heal. It's going to be different for each one of us. You know, what am I working on this year is going to be very different than what I'm working on next year. Cleaning up my view, purifying my river of consciousness so that I can find the right way out. Does that make sense? All right. Yeah. Then I need to get back to my lists. I've got to tell you these lists or I'll get in trouble. You sure? Okay. I just want to get through one more list. So there's, all these different lists of these different kinds of sufferings. So let me give you another list. These are the 6 kinds of suffering. Birth. So this covers everything you all said is somewhere in these lists too. Birth, aging, the experience of birth being traumatic itself. Aging, whatever age you are, it all has different elements of discomfort, pimples to arthritis. Sickness, death, encountering the unpleasant, and being separated from the pleasant. And then taking rebirth with contaminated aggregates. What that means is that the form that we're in, the way that we view things is not pure, right? So that's what causes us to get angry or jealous or upset or whatever those things are. I was talking to somebody about this and she's saying, yeah, but those things are going to arise. I'm like, of course they're going to arise. The whole point is that we try to create a little bit of space so that we recognize when they arise and we don't just follow them willy-nilly. We go, okay, that's jealousy. What can I do with this now? Am I going to follow it blindly or am I going to try to work with it some? Yeah, okay, so that's 8. We have like 3, 6, and 8. I've done the 8. I want to lead you through a little meditation on 6. But before I do that, I want to get to your question.
You already covered the encountering unpleasant.
Yeah?
That was my question. But
Okay.
It's good now. Can you repeat the 7 and 8?
Okay, the number 7 and 8? Number 7 is, I'm sorry. I guess I missed one. Okay, let me go through them all again. Birth, aging, sickness, death, encountering the unpleasant, being separated from the pleasant, not achieving one's desires. That's 7. Yeah. That's one I missed, yeah. Not achieving one's desires and taking rebirth with contaminated aggregates. All right. Then 6. The suffering of uncertainty. And we're going to do a little meditation on some of these, so I'm just going to list them for now. The suffering of uncertainty, how everything is so uncertain. You never have a guarantee. The suffering of dissatisfaction. Nothing's perfect. The suffering of leaving the body again and again, taking new bodies. The suffering of joining with suffering again and again. Each lifetime in samsaric existence has some different version of suffering. The suffering of rising and falling, meaning being a prison guard to being an inmate, being a prison guard to being an inmate until you can get out. It's just going to be rising and falling. And the suffering of being alone, meaning that even when we're very close to people, they can't experience exactly what we're experiencing. They don't know exactly what we're going through in our greatest joys or sorrows, that there's part of us that will feel that separation. Okay. Yeah.
So I have struggled with what aggregates
Aggregates, yeah.
Is there a place I can read more that's more clear than
Yeah.
Rinpoche?
Right. So the question is, is there a place to read more about aggregates? So do you have access to the Discovering Buddhism material?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, come and talk to me later. But because you could, I'm sure on the FPMT website there'll be a list of what the aggregates are, but it does mean the collection of things that form us more than just our body. Then it goes into the details of consciousness.
Yeah, I guess I'm just struggling with the concept.
Okay. So the basic concept would be even just the things that come together to form whatever we've labeled as steep. So physically, and then my senses and my thoughts and my consciousness and all of those things that come together to form the aggregate of me.
So those are the parts that make up the karma that I'm experiencing now.
Right. The form, your form.
This form.
Yeah.
At this point.
Right.
And
Right.
then when I get reborn, it will be different aggregates.
Right. Right. So then consciousness will, yeah. So whatever comes together then comes apart. So we could even say for this class, what makes up this class? So there's the building and the people and me and the time, all these things that come together to say, there's the DB class. And then it comes apart. DB class left. DB class comes back. Another incarnation like that. So our we could, our self, whatever we call our self, isn't pure. It's contaminated with the different negative thoughts and mind streams that we have that get in our way. Okay, so let's finish up with a short meditation on some of these sufferings, unease, whatever. And as you're getting into a comfortable position, check your motivation. And remembering that we're trying to improve our chances of getting out of this prison we've discovered we're in, so that we can turn around and help everyone else out. That there's actually a place that is freer than what we're currently experiencing. And to help ourselves, we're going to look a little bit more deeply at the parts of this prison camp. We're just going to go through 3 of them right now. But bring all of your awareness to the fact that there is such uncertainty in our lives, in our relationships. We can't be certain that our relationship is going to stay or stay the same. Things shift. The uncertainty of situations. When we might have to move, when we might have to find a new job. The uncertainty of all the things in our life. We live with this uncertainty, but it also causes unease. And then the unease of dissatisfaction. Nothing's perfect. We can think of our favorite vacation place and still see how it's not perfect. How it could also become a problem if there's not enough heat, if there's a disaster. Look at our favorite person. We can also easily see the imperfections, the potential for pain. The unease of dissatisfaction. And we see the unease of leaving our body again and again, lifetime after lifetime. We leave a body we may become very attached to. Take another body with its faults and imperfections. Sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we're not. The body also goes through all the changes, aging, sickness, death. Sometimes it's like leaving a best friend again and again. So by looking at these, we resolve to remember the truth of unease, the truth of our situation, and not allow ourselves to come under the sway of ignorance, thinking that this unease is happiness itself. We think, I'm going to use this awareness of unease to fuel my actions towards liberation, towards enlightenment. This life is my best chance to finish suffering, to finish unease, uncertainty, dissatisfaction, pain for myself and others forever. I will not miss this opportunity. I will use my life well to generate bodhicitta, to see reality directly, and to complete the path to Buddhahood. I know that others have escaped. I know they have left a trail for me to follow. I will continue with the motivation and the energy to use this life well. Not to become overwhelmed with unease, but energized to find the way out. And then, as a way to dedicate the merit that you've created just by coming here, by talking to others, sharing your experiences, listening, setting your motivation, you've created energy, you've created seeds, positive seeds in your stream of consciousness. And by directing where these seeds will grow, you have this chance to direct them in where you want them to grow, rather than just having them grow anywhere. So you may dedicate them in lots of ways, but you might consider dedicating them to your great escape, your complete enlightenment, your freedom from suffering, your ability to help others all along the way. You can use everything. His Holiness said that a bodhisattva is someone who doesn't mind working eons to get out of prison, because at each moment they are benefiting others, and they're just moving from happiness to happiness. Okay, then if you open the prayer books to page 32, we'll just finish with Shanti Deva's prayer. It's like the highest wish, that's what we're saying here. It's on page 32 and 33. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing and the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May the medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. All right, see you all next week. Thank you.